Hi all. How you doing, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to November 19th, 2024. How many more days we have left? I don't know. The way things are going with Russia, Ukraine, the United States. We'll talk about that, but also talk about Trudeau's outlandish performance at the G20 when we come back.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
So I rushed over to I'll call it the studio. It's more like my library here. After I'm always on at least once a week, I go on a show in Mississauga. It's Saga 770 with my friend Mark Petron, who is a great broadcaster, and we talk for half an hour at least once a week. And I was on his show at 7:30 and ran from that interview over here. So I got a lot of stuff to share with you today, though. I'm very excited about the show today. It's we're going to go in a lot of directions, and I hope. I should say, please like this broadcast, share it with your friends and family. I can see YouTube is putting the thumb on me again today. Yesterday they got me because we talked about immigration. Can't talk about immigration, but we will. Just can't say we're going to talk about immigration. That's the way it is. So the Randy Boissonnault saga continues. How does this guy stay on as a cabinet minister? You have to laugh because nobody is willing to stand up in the House of Commons to defend this guy. And you'll see this from this clip. He had a pathetic self-defense yesterday. He doesn't know who he is. But he's under fire again, for this cocaine bust that occurred in his address. And it's just incredible. And of course, Paulia was up asking about this yesterday. And yeah, well, we'll get to that one in a minute. I want to show you this clip. Here we are.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the employment minister first denied that he and his company were profiting off government business, and then text messages showed the contrary. They referred to a Randy. Well, he claimed that it was another Randy. We now know there is no other Randy. We know he falsely claimed he was Indigenous in order so that his company could steal resources that were meant for real Indigenous people. And now his company address matches the address of a place that was the location of 2 cocaine busts. Any one of these things would be a resigning offense. Why won't he resign now? Yeah.
Order. The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, I know the person referred to in today's article. I've never met that person. I've had no dealings with her whatsoever. Those are the facts.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Apparently the person he doesn't know is himself. He says that he's not the Randy in the text messages, but his own business associates say there is no other Randy. He says that he said that he was Indigenous in order that he did now, while his company has the same address as a place that has 2 cocaine busts. He says he doesn't know the person involved in that address either. Does this minister even know who he is? Yeah.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, the article states...
And ask all members, please. There's the Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development from the top.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know the person referred to in the article today. I've never met her. I've had no dealings with her whatsoever. The article states that fact, and that is the fact.
The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The minister from Edmonton is a fake and a phony. He said that he was not the Randy...
I'm going to ask, this is a couple of times that I've asked the honourable members. I'm going to ask the honourable members again to remember when they speak directly to members, they have to be, of course, extend to them all the respect that each member, as members, are deserving of. So I'm going to ask the honourable member, please, to rephrase this question to start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, this minister deserves to be criticized in the People's House, the House of Commons. He said he was not the Randy involved in his company, but we know there's only one Randy at the company. He said he wasn't involved in the operations of the company, but text messages reveal that he is. He said he was Indigenous to profit from government contracts, trying to steal from First Nations communities. When will the Prime Minister fire this phony for making false claims to steal from First Nations?
I'm going to invite all members to be very judicious in terms of the use of their language in this place. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my colleague has addressed this issue and stated that those claims are false. Mr. Speaker, we addressed the fact that that business was never listed as an Indigenous business on the procurement site, and it in fact received no funding from the Government of Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good answer.
Well, not a very good answer. Of course, the issue here is that the company owned by Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault shared a post office box with a woman who was detained in 2 major drug busts. So once again, this is so shady. And to suggest that there was no government, I mean, these people just cannot tell the truth for anything to save their lives. And I just find this outrageous. He's continuing to serve as a cabinet minister despite all this. Anyway, I want to get to the next, because this is Justin Trudeau's been at the G20. You say, where is the Prime Minister? We asked that last week. He's been running around the world knowing that when he comes back, the knives are out to take him down as the leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada. So he's been running around the world trying to avoid any sort of contact with Canada. And you wouldn't believe what he was up to. And of course, we mentioned this here. He missed, look at this. He missed the G20 group photo at the G20 in Brazil. And of course, it's for the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. This is so ironic because Justin Trudeau, of course, doesn't care if we go hungry in Canada because of his carbon tax. He doesn't care if we go hungry because he's fighting pollution, as he calls it, which it isn't. And he said that. He actually said that. And once again, I said, let's keep boosting these numbers today because YouTube is constant.
Have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We're delighted to have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's widely known that your government has been a leader on climate action, both at home and overseas, right?
Well, first of all, we've known for decades now that in order to build a strong economy, we have to be protecting the environment. The challenge we're facing right now is that the direct pressures on individuals and households, the affordability crisis, that being kicked in the teeth by inflation around the world over the past few years. It's really, really easy when you're in a short-term survive. I got to be able to pay the rent this month. I got to be able to buy groceries for my kids, to say, okay, let's put climate change as a slightly lower priority. We can't do that.
We're delighted to have Prime Minister Justin.
Okay, did you just hear that? So climate change should have the same priority as buying the groceries. He's finally said exactly what he believes, and this is why he behaves the way he does. This is a man who has never had to worry about where his next meal is coming from. Came from a privileged upbringing. The son, supposedly, of a prime minister, one of the longest serving prime ministers in Canadian history, probably, I think, the second longest after Mackenzie King. He never had to worry about a job. People who come from families like the Trudeau family can always get a job. He never really had a real job except as a drama teacher and becoming the leader of the Liberal Party. So when he thinks about what the average person has to go through, it's not in the equation for him to think that people might not have enough money in their pockets or in their bank account to pay the bills, pay the mortgage or the rent, and feed their families. And some people are in that situation. But Justin Trudeau thinks it's just as important to worry about climate change as it is to worry about the family budget and about feeding your family. This is the ultimate indictment of Justin Trudeau's arrogance, ignorance, and yes, plain idiocy. You can't get any more stupid than making a comment like this. And of course, he wasn't finished yet.
Has become a way of helping with affordability, of putting more money in the pockets of people who are struggling. Because when we talk about fighting climate change, everyone has the sense that, oh no, big businesses and millionaires are going to find ways around it. And it's always hardworking consumers and ordinary folks that bear the brunt of the changes. And what we've had to do in Canada, and what we've successfully done, is change that dynamic so our fight against climate change goes hand in hand with affordability. But that's where, as I was talking about earlier, we're facing a level of attacks, of misinformation, of disinformation.
He couldn't go half an hour without saying misinformation and disinformation. And of course he knows this is all lies. How many times has he been shown that the carbon rebate, as he likes to call it, does not put more money in your pocket than the carbon tax takes out? That's a bald-faced lie. The parliamentary budget officer has said that twice now. And we're only scratching the surface of how injurious, how bad the carbon tax is on the economy, how much it adds to the cost of living. We're not even scratching the surface, but we do know it has to be banned. But Trudeau continues to lie publicly in Canada and around the world about how Canadians are somehow benefiting from his carbon tax.
By people who are saying, no, we have to stop the fight against climate change in Canada so we can put a little more money in your pockets, even though that's exactly the wrong thing for the planet. And it's actually the wrong thing for money in their pockets. And that's a lot of what the next year's election is going to be about in Canada.
Yeah, it's going to be about you leaving office, Justin. That's what the next election is going to be about. Now, I want to show you, once again, as bleak as things look in Canada, and as we hope and pray that we're in the final weeks or days of Justin Trudeau's authoritarian rule, the news from the United States just keeps getting better.
Back, I will say that, yeah, here they come. You're just going to hold on to your britches, because here they come. They're coming back.
The President-elect has confirmed that he plans to declare a national emergency on border security, and the US military will be deployed to assist deporting illegal immigrants. Authorities estimate that there are around 11 million people illegally living in the United States as we speak, and Trump officials say that they plan on prioritising those who pose a risk to public safety. They will be deported first. But Democrats say they're going to put up a fight.
We will be playing a lot of defense, I know, over the next couple of years, protecting our communities, particularly our immigrant communities.
Before we get to the rest of that, it's interesting because this hasn't been done in a while. It's very true. Using the military to enforce the border law, using the military to enforce border security, but it has been done. And not only that, people have been deported from the United States. I was just reading the other day that President Dwight Eisenhower deported over 1 million illegals in the 1950s. So to say that Trump is just talking through his mouth, through his nose here, that this is, or that he has no intention of doing this. Yes, he has every intention of doing this, and it's going to happen. And he's putting the plan in place, which is using the military, because yes, we heard last week that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, probably doesn't have sufficient manpower.
Here's Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs speaking on ABC News, trying to make her case in an interview.
But this, of course, is how the Democrats are reacting. Democrats are saying, we're not going to help Trump get rid of illegals. We love illegals.
Which can only be described as a train wreck.
Would you, as governor, allow state police and National Guard to carry out mass deportations?
We will not be participating in misguided efforts that harm our communities, and I've been incredibly clear about that.
And it gets worse as Katie Hobbs struggles to answer a very simple question.
What would worry you the most, Governor, about mass deportations?
Well, I think the diversion of law enforcement from the work that they do every day to keep our communities safe. People hiding in fear. We saw that under previous state policies here, and it harms communities. It tears families apart.
Katie Hobbs is getting.
How did that woman ever become governor of a state of Arizona? Remember, Arizona was the state that Barry Goldwater hailed from, Senator Barry Goldwater, Republican presidential candidate in 1964. Mr. Conservative, wrote the book Conscience of a Conservative. How does a state like Arizona elect an airhead like that? It's just incredible. And not to mention the fact that Arizona is at the forefront of the border crisis.
Absolutely slammed for this on social media, many pointing out that this is what the American people voted for. Donald Trump won the battleground state of Arizona by over 5 points. The state has made it clear they want Donald Trump to deliver on his promises. The president-elect has announced Tom Homan as his border czar, who says plans are well underway.
As far as the deportation operation, we will prioritize public safety threats and national security threats because they pose the biggest danger to the United States. Security, he's got 3 rails. So we'll do the deportation operation with the priorities I just talked to you out of the gate. That'd be the priorities. Second thing is secure that border.
Many online are comparing him to the border czar of the Biden administration. See if you notice the difference.
Up with education, down with deportation. Up with education, down with deportation.
I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.
We are in for a big change come January. Donald Trump is continuing to announce key positions. Over the weekend, he went to the UFC with.
And that, I'll end it there because I want to show you this last clip because really, this is all very important. But if the world stumbles into a nuclear war right now because of complete stupidity, because I don't believe Joe Biden's in control of the presidency. He hasn't been for a long time. I don't believe Joe Biden made the decision to give long-range U.S. missiles to Ukraine to use. I don't think he made that decision. I think that was made by Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, and his Secretary of State, Tony Blinken. These are the people in control of foreign policy right now in the United States. They made these decisions. Joe Biden is not even there. He didn't show up for the photo op, by the way, the photo op at the G20, just like Justin Trudeau. So Justin Trudeau, I think, has more in common with Hunter Biden than he does Joe Biden. But the two of them are not there. No shows because the two of them are at times just as vacuous and just unable to navigate reality. But I want you to watch this interview between Judge Napolitano. His show, by the way, Judging Freedom, is one of the best on YouTube. This is a guy who does first class interviews every day, 2 or 3 of them. Fantastic show. If you want to know what's really going on in foreign policy, watch this show. But this is a great moment yesterday when former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter, who is often on the show and he often goes on redacted to talk about this. And he's talking about what is going on with Ukraine.
Well, we already know what the risks are because this is the second time we've gone through this scenario. The first time, of course, was in September when Joe Biden was ready to issue such authorization on September 13th. On September 12th, the Russian President Vladimir Putin made it clear that if this were done, this would be interpreted by Russia as an act of war and would be responded in kind. On September 13th, the day Biden was going to sign off on this, he had a White House meeting with Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations reiterated that if he signed that document, a declaration of war would have been signed. And this was backed up by the Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, who spoke to several officials, former government officials, who called him at the behest of the Biden administration to find out were the Russians serious. Anatoly Antonov said not only were the Russians serious, but that when this went nuclear, notice what I said, when this went nuclear, the United States would be involved. So he said there will be a nuclear war and America will be part of it. It won't be limited to Europe. Biden wisely backed down. So we know exactly what's going to happen. The Russians have not changed their posture whatsoever. If Ukraine, let me make it as clear as possible. If Ukraine uses an ATACMS missile to strike a target inside Russia, that is in Kursk Oblast, Russia will say that that's an attack by the United States and will treat it accordingly. It will be a state of war between the United States and Russia. And from what I understand, I've been in contact with sources in Moscow. First of all, let me just say that the Russians aren't panicked. What the Russians are saying is that the decisions have already been made. Anybody who's looking for a convoy of vehicles running to the Kremlin to decide, the decision has been made. It is automatic. The moment the ATACMS is used, Russia will respond, and the response will be catastrophic for Ukraine and devastating for NATO and the United States. When I say catastrophic, Kiev will be destroyed. It won't be a nuclear weapon, but I've been told what the weapon probably will be, and it'll be a gigantic thermobaric bomb that will level downtown Kiev, killing everybody there. Russia will take Kiev off the map. And if I know this, the CIA knows this, Biden knows this, Zelensky knows this. The thing is, they think Russia's bluffing. They don't think Russia will do it. It's not a gamble I'm willing to take because it's not just gambling away the lives, millions of lives in Kiev, but it's gambling away all of humanity. If the West is wrong and Russia's not bluffing, there will be a war, and that war will be nuclear. And we will all die.
Couldn't put it any more succinctly or plainly than that. And it amazes me how people have forgotten that nuclear war is not just unwinnable, it should be unthinkable. We used to understand that. Maybe you and I still do. But the political leaders in the United States, in all of Western Europe, and in Canada, don't get that. They really think a nuclear war can't happen, but if it does, we'll get through it. It's worth the risk. What, Ukraine is worth the risk? It is not. We need peace in Ukraine. Donald Trump has promised to do that. Why don't we just wait a couple of months? Literally. 2 months and a day, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the next president of the United States. Let's see if he can obtain a ceasefire in this war before it goes nuclear. Is that not worth the chance? But no. Biden's proxies, Blinken and Sullivan, want a nuclear war just because it's probably the last thing they're ever going to do. And that is completely unacceptable. And we have to put things in perspective. You know, I served in the military for many years. I was a Cold Warrior. I fought the Cold War. I was as anti-communist as anybody, and I remain anti-communist. But I always understood we did not want a war with the Soviet Union because nobody was going to win that one. We had to get along somehow. And guess what? We have to get along somehow right now because Russia is no longer even communist. And no, I don't get any money from Russia. I'm not here to read Russian talking points. I'm here to read the talking points about peace and security and how we end wars and not spend billions of dollars we don't have to keep those wars going. Nobody's going to pay me to do that, believe me. Thank you for watching today, folks. We will be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know so we can all continue to resolve to resist. Thank you so much for watching today.